From the moment I fell down the rabbit hole that is desk setups, the Apple ecosystem had me wrapped in its aluminum-clad fingers. For 3 years, I stayed loyal to the Apple ecosystem, completely ignoring everything from the other side. But a little over 3 months ago, my loyalty wavered and I opened up myself to the other side. By that I mean building my first PC. Since then, my desk has become a battleground where macOS and Windows are locked in a daily tug of war for my eyeballs. On one side, there's the efficiency and seamless integration of Apple's ecosystem. On the other, the power, customization, and endless upgradability of Windows. Two radically different worlds, yet somehow I've found a way to make them coexist in harmony. People of the internet, welcome to the tour of the most unique hybrid desk setup you'll ever see. Buckle up and let's go for the ride. Anchoring my entire setup is my walnut hardwood sit-stand desk from Desky. This beast isn't just a desk, it's the foundation holding everything together. Let's talk size because size matters.
That's what she said!
At 200 centimeters in length and 75 centimeters in depth, this desk offers enough real estate to comfortably house the legion of accessories and peripherals I have. That means, despite the many accessories and peripherals I have, my desk doesn't feel cramped. This makes it ideal for work, creativity, and some PC gaming. Functionality-wise, it operates like most sit-stand desks, but with the Desky touch. Like most sit-stand desks, it comes with a control module that controls its beefy legs to shift up and down with absolute precision. Just tap on your preferred setting and boom, you're standing, you're sitting, or whatever else you'd want to do at your desk.
Moving on top of the desk, sitting front and center is the undisputed king of my keyboard collection, my mechanical steampunk masterpiece. Now, I own a fair share of keyboards, but this one is special, and not just because it looks like something pulled straight from the 18th century, even though that's a huge part of the charm. First up, the novelty factor. Truth be told, you don't just stumble upon a keyboard like this every day, and judging by the flood of comments I get whenever it appears on screen, people can't help but be intrigued. The build, a glorious mix of walnut-stained wood and bronze, giving it that old-world nostalgic masterpiece reborn with modern innovation aesthetic. And then there are the keycaps. They've got this slight divot that cradles my fingers just right, making typing feel oddly satisfying. Oh, and the sound? Chef's kiss. The kind of clicky goodness that would make any mechanical keyboard purist nod in approval. Down at the base, there's a snap-on wrist rest for a touch of ergonomic bliss, and if you thought that was all, here's where things get even more interesting. This keyboard isn't just for type, it doubles as a clock and also comes with a pen and pencil holder. And for those wondering how I managed to seamlessly switch between Mac OS and Windows with this beauty, well, that's a secret I'll be revealing a little later in the video. Moving along, another accessory that I use across both ecosystems is my keyboard's trusty sidekick, aka the mouse, and the one I'm currently using is the MX Master 3S. Now, don't get me wrong, I love mixing things up with my Steampunk mouse, but when it comes to pure comfort and ergonomic supremacy, the MX Master 3S takes the crown. Coming in with a battery life that seems to last longer than some of my New Year's resolutions and an absurd level of customization via the Logi Options Plus, it's a dream to use for anyone. On a side note, I've also spent time with its older sibling, the MX Master 3, and while these differences won't have you racing to upgrade, the 3S brings some sleek improvements, an 8000 dpi sensor which is double the previous 4000, whisper quiet clicks, and glass tracking, which means this mouse will glide on most surfaces like a figure skater on ice. To level up the ergonomics, I've paired it with the Carpio 2.0 wrist rest, forming a perfect wrist-saving duo, and because aesthetics matter, I've structured everything with the Grovemade Mousepad and this grey felt desk mat from Amazon, which ties it all together. With some of the peripherals already laid out, let's pick apart the brains on both sides, starting on the Apple half of the setup. 3 years on, M1 Mac Mini is still the main rig, although at this point I can comfortably say it's seen better days. Now, don't get me wrong, it can still do the job, but with lots of struggle. For instance, when creating a project, the dreaded wheel of death always pops up and spins for almost a minute before I get to do anything, which to be honest is a bit annoying. In addition to that, effects on the timeline take an eternity to load and export times have also ballooned. Luckily, most of this heavy lifting is done on my PC, but I'll hold off the PC talk till we get to it. For other mundane computer tasks like browsing the web, typing up scripts, it just works fine. As for gaming, I won't even go there. Now, given the state of things, I'm in the process of getting the new M4 Mac Mini as a replacement. Moving across the fence, my PC has breathed a new lease of life, and before I go any further, I know the PC fanatics would like to hear a breakdown of the components. Starting with the graphics card, I chose the Asus ProArt RTX 4080. Then for the CPU, I went with the Intel Core i9-14900K, 64 gigs of DDR5 memory for the RAM, an Asus ProArt Z790 motherboard, the Ryujin 3 all-in-one liquid cooler, 4TB of SSD storage thanks to the Samsung 990 Pros, Lian Li SLV2 fans, and a 1200-watt power supply from Asus. As for the case, being a walnut glazer, I couldn't look past the Fractal North XL, hence the reason why it stands on the right side of my desk. Now, before I go any further, I know someone in the comments will say, the power supply in the comments is a bit of an overkill for the components I have. Well, if the 5090 power consumption numbers are anything to go by, it's safe to say I did a good job of future-proofing in case I make any upgrades. Functionality wise, like I mentioned a little earlier, my PC takes care of the heavy lifting when it comes to my creative work and then some, as I can now play some of my favorite titles with so much ease. Do I have a favorite between the two ecosystems? To be honest, I'm torn between. Like mentioned in the intro, I like the efficiency and seamless integration of the Apple ecosystem as it makes working across all my devices super easy, but when it comes to upgradability, after 3 or 4 years, I have to get a new one unlike the PC, which I can simply swap out the outdated component for a better one in a few minutes. Add to that some gaming and the allure of having a decent PC gets even stronger. Now, do you really need macOS and PC at the same time? One is enough, and if you'd ask me, I'd advise picking one that integrates with your devices seamlessly. Speaking of seamless integration, the way I manage to do so across macOS and Windows is through an app called Synergy. For those who'd like to give it a try, after you download the app, get into the server computer and put in your credentials. If you're a bit lost, the server computer would be the one that your mouse and keyboard are plugged into, and for context, my PC is the server computer and my M1 Mac Mini is the client. Once you've logged in your server computer details, switch to the client computer and do the same. After that, your client computer will pop up on the server computer and all you'll need to do is align them according to the layout of your computers to allow the mouse cursor to seamlessly switch, otherwise it wouldn't be possible. In my case, the server computer is on the right and the client computer is on the left. Just like that, you'll be able to move back and forth between the two ecosystems without any troubles. For a detailed look of other ways you can create a hybrid desk setup, check out this video I did a while back. Moving along, at this point it would be a disservice not to talk about the display where all this back and forth is happening. Enter the Samsung Odyssey G9 OLED. This is another recent acquisition and honestly speaking, the best super ultra wide I've ever used. I say that because over the years I've used a bunch of super ultra wides and out of all of them, the OLED sticks out its neck across multiple categories. Starting with the display, out of the box the colors are amazing and I didn't need to do any calibration. As a creator, that's super important, especially when editing. When it comes to productivity, it's a super ultra wide, so I can have multiple windows across both ecosystems and plug away at whatever task I have at hand. As for gaming, the 0.03 milliseconds response time is just insanely fast and I've been having a blast when playing FPS games like Black Ops 6. When it comes to placement preference, I prefer it on a monitor arm as it looks a lot cleaner, and the one I'm using is the Ergotron HX monitor arm. I'll summarize it with this statement. It's one of the best when it comes to supporting super ultrawides. That said, it's not all roses and sunshine though. There are a few areas I notice a slight dip compared to my old Samsung Odyssey Neo G9. First up is the text clarity. That of the Neo G9 is just a tad bit sharper. Brightness is another area the Neo G9 shines, and it gets bright enough to fight glare. As for the G9 OLED, while it doesn't get bright enough to fight intense glare from bright sources, small highlights still pop against the rest of the image in HDR.
That said, are these differences really deal breakers? In my opinion, not really, especially for the average consumer. Putting in mind, most people won't be able to tell apart these tiny little micro differences.
A difference they'll notice though is the video quality of the Insta 360 Link, as it's still one of the best in the game. It's got a few updates over the past couple of years, but being the first of its kind in the webcam space when it first launched, it still delivers the goods. Its fast tracking, zooming in and out with just hand gestures still work amazingly well, just like when it first came out. Add in some AI magic dust and I can comfortably turn into a professor if need be without turning into a blurry mess. If you'd ask me, the perfect definition of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Something that would need fixing if they broke are your eyes, but with the help of a monitor light, you could reduce the risk of that happening using a monitor light like the Benq Screenbar Halo. It's been around for a while now and it's worked amazingly well using this controller that's just an extended arm away, but to be honest, you don't need to fork out 250 Australian dollars just for a monitor light. For a fifth of the price, you can get something like the Xiaomi monitor light, which works just as well. For my audio needs, the Shure SM7B is currently my mic of choice after using the Blue Baby Bottle SL for a while. At this point, I'd assume if you watch desk setup videos, the Shure SM7B is the undisputed king when it comes to good quality audio. No wonder a decent amount of podcasts use it. At the time of purchase about 3 years ago, I got it for about 400 Australian dollars, but because it's become so popular, the price has ballooned to over $600. That's just insane, and I won't recommend you buying a microphone at that price. There are a lot cheaper options out there that produce decent quality sound. My price ranging aside, I've mounted it on an Elgato mic arm and at the very end of the XLR keyboard with the Dynamite Cloud Lifter, which sticks into my audio interface of choice, the Audient Evo 4. This combo ensures I get good quality audio that gets dished out through the Kanto YU2s, and again, being a walnut glazer, they had to be walnut to match my aesthetic. As for sound quality, the Kanto YU2s have amazing quality, although when it comes to the low frequencies, it's not as punchy. Speaking of punch, it gets its punch through its connection to the CalDigit TS3 Plus, which is my docking station of choice. It's been on the block for a while now, but like I said before, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I say that because it gives me all I need in terms of connectivity, and you can tell by the number of accessories I have connected into it. Moving along, an accessory that doesn't need connection to anything is the AirPods Pro. Over the years, it's copped a lot of slack because of its price, but let's be honest, the sound quality you get out of it is comparable to very few headphones in the market. Do I recommend them? Maybe not. There are cheaper options that can give you good quality audio. When it comes to organization, mine starts with these task and time cards that sit on this walnut tray. To put that into context, at the start of every week, I like to write down what I've got planned for the week, adding in time slots as well, and this helps me to stay organized. Still on that organization train, this Grovemade desk shelf not only keeps my frequently used items organized, but also adds visual structure to the desk. Now, I get it's not the cheapest, but when I got it 3 years ago, Grovemade had the entire desk setup community on a chokehold, and I just happened to be one of those people. That also explains why I have a desk tray, phone charger, and mousepad from Grovemade. Moving along, IKEA also had the desk setup community on a chokehold when it blew up during the infamous lockdowns, and part of that IKEA arsenal were the Alex drawers. 4 years on, I still have them standing on either side of the desk, and they provide all the storage I need for the desk area. Inside each drawer, I've got IKEA drawer organizers to ensure everything stays neat and visually appealing, because let's be honest, without them, you'd think a tsunami went through my desk drawers. When it comes to keeping my devices powered up, This 100-watt GAN charger from Ugreen takes care of that. It's got 3 USB-C ports and 1 USB A port, with ports C1 and C2 delivering up to 45 watts of fast charging, and that's not even the best part. When things start to heat up, this charger doesn't cook them up. Thanks to its dynamic temperature sensors and an intelligent PMW chip, it adjusts power output on the fly, keeping my devices safe and sound. So whether I'm charging one device or 4 at once, I never have to worry about my charger turning into a mini toaster. Moving along, lighting is one of those things that most people don't give much attention in the desk setup space, but I'd argue it's super important. For my setup, I've got the Elgato key light, which has been a total game changer for my video calls. Not only does it keep me looking presentable, but it's ridiculously easy to control from my computer, and the best part is I get to play around with warm and cool tones depending on the vibe I'm feeling. Speaking of warm and cool tones, I can do that with the Govee Flow Plus and then some. I like how they are easy to control using the Govee app, and I've also been doing the same for the Govee LED strips. With just a single button press, they are up and running. Moving on to decor and plants, if there's one secret ingredient to making a setup look aesthetic, it's plants and decor. They're like the final sprinkle of seasoning on a chef's masterpiece. Without them, the setup just looks flat. Now, while majority of the plants are in different spots of the office, that effect trickles down to the desk setup. Let's talk decor. My retro telephone, still going strong 3 years later, proving that good design and a bit of nostalgia never go out of style.
Finally, I get to sit down after a very long day shooting this desk setup, which coincidentally is the perfect time to talk about this chair. Alright, people of the internet, gather around. This right here is the Rodin office chair. Yep, the one that's been turning heads and making my work days so comfortable. Oh, and if you think it looks familiar, that's because it takes cues from the iconic Eames lounge chair. But the real question is, does it live up to the hype? 2 months in and I still can't get enough of it. Seriously, the comfort of this chair is just out of this world, and apparently you guys felt the same way because this thing had everyone talking. Now let's talk about build quality, because oh boy, it's something else. Imagine soft plush sharper fabric hugging you like a supportive best friend, while a sturdy steel alloy ensures the ground underneath you doesn't crumble under pressure. That's this chair in a nutshell. And coming in at 107 kilograms, I'm absolutely pressure testing this bad boy. But what about durability? I've got a similar looking chair in my second setup, and I've had it for about a year now. If that's anything to go by, then this bad boy is definitely gonna stand the test of time. People of the internet, that wraps up this video. Let me know if it qualifies as the most unique desk setup you've ever seen. That aside, I hope this video gives you some ideas on how to deck out your space, and as always, I hope you enjoyed and found this video helpful. If you got to this point of the video, I'd assume seeing the entire build process would be of interest to you. To watch that video, check out this clip here. But before that, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and click the notification bell to get notified whenever I post a new video. People of the internet, I'm signing out. See you on the next one.